Good morning. I don't know if you noticed, there's this little gizmo up here, the green, yellow, red light that gives the speakers their timing. It reminded me, a friend of mine accompanied his boss to Washington, D.C. to speak in front of Congress, and his boss was really nervous because you only get 3 minutes, and there were 3 lights, and they weren't this fancy thing, and his boss was saying, oh my God, can I do this, can I do this? And my friend walked up to the podium in the hearing room in Congress, and went, and unscrewed the other 2 lights. He said, you're all set. So this is definitely tamper-proof. So let me get started here. So we're going to go to the retail level with ecosystem services and talk about crowdfunding. But we have a little bit of geographic check to do. I am from the East Coast. I just want to let you know Boston is not in the Connecticut River watershed. Let's get that clear. My son actually is a college student. He lives in Boston. He's a Red Wings fan. And he scored tickets to go see one of the games, and so I called him afterwards and to find out if he was going to be nice to his girlfriend, who's a Bruins fan. And he said, Dad, it was great. I had so much fun. Except after the game, I was taking the T home, and it was about 11:30, and I said, did you wear your Red Wings jersey? He goes, oh yeah, absolutely. And he said, I was getting ready to get on the train, and these 2 huge guys, in Boston they call them Southies, these 2 Southies were coming up to me, hassling me. He goes, it was awesome. They were like leaning in on me, giving me all kinds of crap, and the train rolled right up and the doors opened, and I hopped on, I turned around, and I waved my middle finger just as the doors closed. I said, you're nuts. To be young and a knucklehead. Okay, context. Again, the Connecticut River watershed, it's New England's largest watershed, 410 miles. It flows through 4 states in New England, but of course, it begins in Canada. This is a picture of the source of the Connecticut River. I like to think that the Connecticut River is actually like many other great things that begin in Canada and eventually make it across the border. Universal health care, hockey, and of course, poutine. We, in fact, call that fries and gravy, but anyway, so that's a good way to think about the Connecticut River. So the Watershed Council, we have been around since 1952. The story goes that we are actually one of the oldest watershed organizations in the country, and so I'm quite honored to be working with the rest of the crew here. This is a picture of Dr. Davidson and his wife from 1959. Dr. Davidson was the chair of our board. And Dr. Davidson recognized the great gift that Canada bestowed on us and the great start that it gives to the Connecticut River. And with his own money, he created a movie. It's about 30 minutes long. It's a sort of a newsreel thing where he went across the border and grabbed some water from the Connecticut. You can see the top of the bottle there right behind his elbow. And he took a boat trip down the river and stopped in every state and managed to get governors, lieutenant governors to meet him on the dock and shake hands. And he showed them the water from Canada and how clean it was. When he got to Connecticut, he scooped up another bucket of water, and it actually was filthy and smelled, hence the gas mask, and had a press conference in 1959 at the mouth of Long Island Sound and said, the water that comes from Canada looks like this, and the water in Connecticut looks like this. We can do far better. So I think as an organization, we've been working very hard to innovate and do effective advocacy. And I will note that you can see Mrs. Davidson, she's got the pearls there. So beware of women showing up wearing pearls and a gas mask. So let's talk about crowdfunding. Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Who here is familiar with crowdfunding and Kickstarter and these platforms? Anybody here invested in a crowdfunding project? So a few folks. All right, so I don't want to assume, and again, I am not a big investor in crowdfunding projects. Our work in this is new to me as well. So what is crowdfunding? So crowdfunding is a response by people to a lack of institutional support for their ideas. Many of the original projects were musicians. They said, look, I want to make a record, and I can't get the record company to produce it for me, so I'm going to use the internet to be able to get people to invest in my idea. It has now spawned to a myriad of different crowdfunding strategies. You can crowdfund anything these days. These are the overall stats for what people estimate has arisen from crowdfunding, the many different sites. I wish these were the stats from cleanwaterfuture.org, but in fact they are not. So over $1 billion has been raised for 50,000 projects from an estimated 5 million investors. So I think today when we look at Clean Water Future, let's throw it up against the very good policy and frameworks that we've been discussing this morning and yesterday and see if it works. Okay, this is the webpage, Clean Water Future. It is a live website. You can check all this out yourself. This is a static image from the last class of projects that were up on the website. Let me back up a little bit and talk about the background. So there is the White River. It's a tributary of the Connecticut. There's a tremendous group called the White River Partnership, and they have been doing work with private landowners for about 15 years, working to make the White River watershed a better place to live. And they said, you know what we should do? We should have a live on-site auction with private landowners putting forward projects that people can invest in. Really cool idea. And they did it. And they got a tremendous amount of press. They raised about $20,000 for a number of projects. One of the projects was Geo from Hurricane Flat Farms. His fields got obliterated. The White River is a very flashy watershed, and when it floods, he was losing farmland and wanted to do an innovative bioengineering project on his property. So they had a live auction. Auctioneer, give me 5, give me 5, give me 7, give me 7, give me 7, give me 8. They raised $20,000 for these projects from people that showed up at the auction. So they had this success, and they looked around and realized that there was funding from the federal government. So the United States Department of Agriculture has a program called the Conservation Innovations Grant Program. And it basically says, give us some cool, different ideas, and we'll throw money at them. So they received a 3-year grant, I believe, and they took this landscape auction idea and turned it into cleanwaterfuture.org and said, let's do crowdfunding. The frame they put around it was very high-minded. And what they said was, private landowners, foresters, farmers, one, don't get enough recognition for what they do, nor do they have enough resources to do the things they want to do, everything we've been hearing about in the conversations today. Then here's the interesting part. The second part of the high-minded frame around this was, there's a lot of people that live in urban areas that don't necessarily know farmers or landowners and say to themselves, I should be doing something. And if I do something in terms of an investment, I'm going to have a connection to improving my environment and a connection to an individual who's doing good work on my behalf. So, how does it play out? I will give you some examples of where it's been successful, and I will give you some examples of where it has not been successful. So I am presenting to you today very much a work in progress of a retail example of how you may or may not get people to provide for ecosystem services. So let's back up a little bit again and talk about how this works. So crowdfunding, what you do is find a platform, and you bring your idea to the platform hosts it, and then you work like heck to be able to get people to notice your project and push that invest or donate button. So what we do is, the website is ours. We inherited it from the Conservation Innovation Grant. It was given to us, so we're sort of the second generation owners of this site. So what we do, within the watershed, we solicit individuals, landowners, or organizations that want to have projects. We approach them and say, all right, if you're interested in doing this, you need to put together a project. You need to have a well-defined project. You need to have a reasonable budget. You need to have a list of places and people that you can go to be able to get possible investments. So we screen and vet them. We give them some information, some marketing ideas, and say, well, you know, you should probably describe things this way, or you don't want to use these words. And then the project is put up on the site. And what you see here are 3 projects that are almost at the end of their funding cycle. So the other part of crowdfunding is it's time limited, and so again, you have a campaign. And so your idea is on this platform for 30, 60, 90 days, it doesn't really matter. We use 90 days as a reasonable window. The project is put up, and the technical part of this is we host the website. This is free for the project sponsors. So unlike Kickstarter or Indiegogo or these other places, they take a percentage of what you earn from your project. This is completely free to the project sponsors, except for the credit card transaction cost 2.9%. All of this is electronic payment processing, although if you want, you can mail a check in. And so the projects are vetted. We work with the project sponsors, and they go up onto the website for the 90 days. Our role at that point, unless the project is ours, and we do occasionally put projects up on this, is to stand back and advertise the website as a whole, but we don't do much work then for the project sponsors, just like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Overall, in terms of success, while we have had the website up, it has raised $55,000 for 17 successful projects. Not bad. It's not $1 billion. From our vantage point, that's a decidedly mixed success. I'm not here trumpeting the be-all and end-all. This is definitely a mixed message as far as what it can raise in terms of real dollars for projects. So some of the projects that have been successful: riparian restoration of farmland, bioengineering projects have raised money. Cleanup sites, so groups have said, we need to clean up this stretch of river. We would like people to invest in this cleanup. Recreational trail equipment to be able to improve trails and prevent erosion. Culverts and dams have been funded through this website. The frame, so again, let's go back to the high-minded perspective. Recognition and resources for private landowners to doing what they're doing, and connecting individuals to those people who may have a disconnect or not enough of a relationship with the people that are providing them those ecosystem services. The projects that we find that have been most successful, and this is not going to be a surprise, are those projects that reached out to people that have personal connections to the project sponsor. Not a surprise. And so one of the questions we've been seeing here today, can you get people to pay for ecosystem services? In the abstract, I think our answer is no. When you see people investing in these different projects, they're investing because they have a personal connection to the individual as the project sponsor. And I'll talk about, I think, some of the reasons why that may be the case and whether that is surmountable. Let's go talk about some particular projects. So again, I can answer plenty of questions about some of the mechanics of the website and how the individual pages work. This is a screenshot on the left. The rectangle there is what shows up on the main page. When you click on that, there's a lot of information about the particular projects. And so the project sponsor describes their project and creates a narrative. The project sponsor puts forward a budget for that project. And the project sponsor, in some instances, puts forward incentives or additional things that they may get. This is also a very important point about how this works or doesn't work. Let's go back to that live landscape auction on the banks of the White River at Hurricane Flats Farms. So the auctioneer was working that hard, and bidding was stalled, slowing down, and they were trying to get, I think it was $10,000 for that project. It wasn't working real well. And the farmer said to the auctioneer, I will throw in a dozen eggs a week for 6 months. Bang, bidding went right up. So one of the things we learned is that you need to be able to provide some additional incentives. So think about crowdfunding and Kickstarter. If you're investing in somebody's movie or their album, you're going to get a copy of the movie or a poster or the CD. What people are finding is, in the abstract, they'll invest in this, but you know what? They want a thing. So for some of our projects, we actually provide a day's guide service. One of our staff is a registered guide, so he'll go out fishing with you for a day in different projects. So we really encourage project sponsors to throw something tangible in that will help people with their investment decision. So Paddle with a Purpose. This is a project where the project sponsor, we moved off the land, and so in some instances, we're not strictly dealing with private land, and that's another message here. We're experimenting, trying to figure out what projects really resonate with people, and we're not being slavish to the high-minded frame around the website. You'll see the far right. When people invest, the website is set up that the investors show up, and then there is social media connected to this, so if you are following this, you can see that people are investing and you get momentum and traffic. In this instance, 3 people invested in this project. Now, Lori did a tremendous job reaching out to people and saying, if you fund this project, we are going to be removing invasive aquatic plants at 3 locations on the Connecticut River in New Hampshire. Put a case forward, described it, seems like a good thing. She didn't get much investment. Here's another one. This is our project. This is a recreational trail stabilization. This was an interesting one for us. We will put projects up ourselves occasionally for work that we do. This is one where a snowmobile trail, it took a hard left at some point near a stream, Bissell Brook, and it was eroding, and the trail was in danger, and a utility corridor also was in danger for some poles eventually, and the brook was brook trout habitat. So we said, great, about $10,000 for this project to be able to stabilize the bank overall. Perfect for Clean Water Future. As an organization, one of the things we thought about was the snowmobile community are not people that we interact with all that often. So a new constituency that we can bring a project to, and boy, why wouldn't they want to invest in something like this? So our staffer, we put the project up, wrote up the project, put things forward, and reached out to the snowmobile club, traveled all the way up to northern Vermont during their races, reached out to people, handed out leaflets. We got 20 bucks. And the snowmobilers said, you know, we're not that wealthy. We don't have a lot of resources to put in this, standing by their $8,000 racing snowmobile machines. All right, so what's the problem? That's on us. I think that's not necessarily on them, and that's part of this messaging thing. How do you communicate this to folks, and do ecosystem services really mean anything to them? You know, we didn't layer a whole lot of ES and, you know, this mumbo jumbo on this project description. Just said, look, we can fix your trail, help the brook trout, and public service in New Hampshire will be happy because their pole's not going to fall in the water. Didn't work. This project was also is comparable to another one that our staffer in New Hampshire did along Mink Brook. And this was a project to plant trees and remove invasive plants. And that project was able to successfully raise several $1,000s because the local conservation commission understood the issue in the abstract and realized that there was water quality impairments, that Mink Brook was significant brook trout habitat, and they got the ecological issues. And the farmer was frosted that he kept losing land into Mink Brook during flooding. And there, the community was able to understand the bigger issue, and there was plenty of community connections, and we got the Rotary Club to invest, the Conservation Commission to invest, and a number of individuals. The demographics, Mink Brook is in Hanover, New Hampshire, the site of Dartmouth College. Bissell Brook is way out in the pucker brush and doesn't have that same demographic. So part of that is, again, messaging. The other part that you want to note when you're doing crowdfunding is to be able to have seed money. So again, all of these projects start with seed money of some form or other, either donated services. So Lori Callahan with her Paddle with a Purpose project put that forward. We've put grant money forward and got that thermometer part way up the bar so people could see that this is a successful project. All right, let's talk about the 7 habits of successful crowdfunders. You got to solve a real problem. People need to know that there's a problem out there. You really have to do your homework and demonstrate that this is a viable thing that you are doing and you are addressing something in a way that is competent and going to be successful. You need to bring money to the table. You can't show up with nothing in order to demonstrate a project that has potential and viability. You have to set a realistic fundraising goal. Again, we're talking little tiny bits of money. This is retail ecological services. You're not going to get big money doing this. Many of our projects overshot. Mary wanted to raise 10 grand for a stormwater infiltration project. She raised about 1,000. Too high a goal, didn't work. Make an effective pitch. You got to be able to sell this, and this is hard for the stuff that we're talking about for all the reasons that we have been talking about this morning. Consider things besides money. You may not be raising money, only money, you may be raising other things, consciousness, awareness, and other attributes of the work you're doing, and make your campaign a top priority. All right, how do we do in general? All right, I think we do okay in terms of solving a real problem in the projects that we put forward. People do their homework. They're projects that are implementable, and we help vet them. You know, if something has got a high bogus factor, we're not going to let it on the website. People bring money to the table. Every time we've done a project, there's been money in that thermometer before the project starts. Realistic funding goal, this probably should be little yes, little no. People have expectations way beyond what they can meet. An effective pitch. If you go on the website and read this stuff, too wordy, it's not compelling, it doesn't mean enough to the people that are reading these projects. People do consider outreach, and I want to focus on this briefly for the end of my conclusion. This can be a lot more than raising the immediate dollars within your project and then making the campaign your top priority. If anybody has been subject to a Kickstarter campaign, you know the emails that you get, it's blistering. You are barraged with them. You need to do this full time to be able to get people's attention because there's way, way too many emails in the world. So let's look at crowdfunding in general. So like many things on the internet that are started in response to some institutional void, after a time, those institutions re-enter. So what's happening with crowdfunding? Venture capitalists, institutional investors, and others watch Kickstarter all the time. And what they're doing is looking for projects that are successful in terms of individual investments and saying, I have pre-vetted a project based on crowdfunding that's going to have a market. That wasn't why Kickstarter was started. Kickstarter was started because the investors weren't anywhere. The other thing that's happening is that people are treating Kickstarter like customers, and you're buying something. You're not investing in a project, you're purchasing a product. And so large companies are also looking at crowdfunding sources the same way. What's the point for this type of crowdfunding? Foundations and other investors. So if you're going to look at crowdfunding, I would encourage you to look at it as a way to demonstrate popular support in a project, not to raise a big bucket of money, but to say, you know, we've got X number of people that believe in this project at the $5 level, at the $25 level, and then push that to foundations or other entities. So it's an attribute of your overall fundraising strategy. Lastly, thanks to USDA, NRCS, and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. And just to know that if you're going to go out on a limb for your water, you should always have a life jacket on. If you're interested, the whole website is open source. It's available to others. We're happy to share, and I can talk at the next session. Thank you.